Good evening. Thank you for being with us tonight. Tonight, the lecture will be held by Oramix. Oramix is a platform that supports women, non-binary, and queer people in the electronic music scene. Was founded in 2017, and the aim of their activities is to open the space for struggling communities, as well as musicians and artists from the Eastern and Central Europe. Oramix on a regular basis runs a podcast series dedicated to artists and groups that I mentioned above. In addition to their online activities, they also created club nights in the pre-COVID time. And concerts, co-create festivals, and other related events, which are showcasing the most interesting artists on the contemporary Polish scene. Out of this, Oramix also organized a series of workshops on sound and music production, but also production workshops itself. Oramix also organized a series of workshops where the participants has the possibility to get in touch with the gear and knowledge that is not readily accessible for everyone. Oramix is created by artists Malaherba, Olivia, Dog's Head Srigeri, Aftomat, Monster, and Isn't. For today's lecture, Oramix will be represented by Aftomat and Dog's Head Srigeri. And from my side, this is all. And now I would like to turn the word over to today's guests. Also, I would like to ask you, please have your microphones muted so we will avoid feedback. And also, if it's possible for you, please have the cameras on so we don't need to stare to the blank screens. And thank you once again. And Oramix, welcome.
Hello, this is Aftermath, and here is Doghead Surigari. So I actually have a bit of an intro as well. I want to talk about what Oramix is and maybe a little bit about what we do, because there's I found out that there's a huge amount of things that we've developed into. As you said, we've started in 2017, and we're like a platform. It started as a platform to empower women on the electronic music scene, which was like a pretty narrow thing that was being done. But as time passed, the reach has broadened, and more and more people were joining the collective. And then now it really encompasses many underrepresented groups in society, women, people of color, immigrants, LGBTQIA people, which maybe for the sake of the lecture, I'm just going to use the umbrella term queer, so to make it faster, and non-binary artists. And essentially, like the majority of underrepresented artists, both in Polish scene and abroad, because we've lately also started advocating for Central and Eastern European artists. So it's basically all rooted in intersectional feminism and gender studies. And we kind of try to apply that to our fields of work, which is music and visual arts and organizing events. So apart from organizing like music events, DJ nights and concerts, and curating festivals or doing charity events, we also do workshops, as you've already said, Jan. Both DJ workshops, producing workshops, application and like IT workshops in general. We did some game engine workshops, for example, Unity engine, which were widely accessible, and I personally benefited from these as well. And our workshops are actually name your price. So there's no like an economical stopgap from people accessing them, which is which also always our big focus. Because not only does the scene discriminate against people who are discriminated against in the society in general, but also it discriminates against people with different social economic backgrounds. So if you come from a smaller city or a poorer family, it usually reflects how well you can do on the music scene, and there's a kind of glass ceiling that's I'm pretty sure everyone knows about. So we do that as well. We try to work on clear communication in terms of discrimination in terms of our workshops as well. And we also do other educational events, which I won't go into much detail into right now. We also work with clubs, especially Polish clubs, in terms of monitoring and implementing safer space policies. So we just try to have an open discussion with them about and try to encourage them to communicate clearly that in the Polish clubs, any kind of xenophobia, homophobia, transphobia, sexism, violence is not going to be tolerated, because the first step is to communicate this in a very honest way. We also try to talk to them about implementing balanced lineups. We do that ourselves. We mostly book artists that are either female, femme, trans, or non-binary, or members of the queer community. As you also said, Jan, we do a series of podcasts, which is like the main idea is to give a spotlight to lesser known or underrepresented artists by mixing them in with the more successful counterparts. Like the online presence of the more successful artists kind of broadens the impact of the series and gives additional spotlight and additional people to listen to the lesser known ones. We've also released 2 charity compilations, which I will go into detail about a bit later. And we have produced some art residencies and open calls for underrepresented artists, which is a more recent thing. And Doghead Surigari will tell you about this a little bit more later. And we also take part in these like think tanks and discussion panels and lectures like today. So yeah, this was like a brief intro about what we do. As you can see, it's a lot, but there's 6 of us and there's so many ideas floating around that it all gets mixed. So now I guess Doghead Surigari, I'm giving you the floor.
Yeah. Hello everyone. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation and for having us for this conversation. My name is Paulina. I play under the nickname of Doghead Surigari. And I'm gonna share my screen now. I prepared some photographs for you and some stuff to actually look at, so you don't have to fully just listen to the voice. I will start this very funny presentation from this screenshot I found randomly on Twitter about angry gay DNA, which I think extremely well fits the current political context in Poland about the abortion law and discrimination towards queer community. So yeah, I'm gonna start with this one. And thank you very much, Kajetan, for the introduction. I would like to also can I actually? Oh yes. I'm gonna hide all of these talking heads. So before I'm gonna start talking about what does it mean for me and for us to work as a collective, I wanted to also show you who we actually are. So this is the photo from our second birthday anniversary. We organized like a huge event with DJs, but also with live concerts and like a lot of other activities. It was extremely huge. And this is our crew, more or less. This photo comes from 2019. It's really difficult to actually gather us together in one place because we are based all over the Europe. So, for instance, I'm based in Netherlands and I live in Netherlands. Other members of Oramix live in France, but also in Austria. And for instance, Kajetan is like based in Poland. So that's why it's really difficult to actually like meet together, and yeah, especially during pandemic. So that was this very, very rare occasion during our second birthday when we decided that no, this is really the time we have to actually see each other and do like celebrate this the anniversary of our platform. And like on the photo you can see this is Isn't Mala Herba, who unfortunately cannot join us today. Foku Fu, she's not a part of our platform anymore, but she was back in 2019. This is very funny photo of me. This is Monster, and this is Kajetan at the very bottom, Aftermath, who is also today with me, like talking about Oramix. So, oopsie, can I actually go? Oh yes. And before, before I'm gonna talk about, like as I said, about what does working as a collective mean to me, I will also very quickly show you about this, like some footage and some documentation of our CDJs workshops, what Kajetan was talking about, because I think it's also nice to actually see this and like see how it really, like how it actually looks like in the space. So here you can see we have CDJs workshops with Monster, who is a part of a member of our collective, and also what Jan also said in the introduction. What is important for us is education and like creating these safer spaces, but also like sharing the knowledge in a way and invite people to come and really try the gear out, like touch it, see this, like how it looks, like come to the club, and actually really kind of get into the interaction with the staff. So yeah, I wanted to show you this. Very like this is, for instance, some documentation from the workshops with Mala Herba. They are really into synthesizers and like all of this very extremely interesting music stuff. So they were like organizing the workshop about how to synth. So you can also see some of the documentation from there. It's also very important, like we perceive education as a very important aspect, aspect of our collective work, because we think that we really have to, in order to build inclusive scene, you have to share opportunities and like share space in a way with other people, and you really have to create this space for them to join and to actually enjoy or like learn. And for me personally, this is the next slide, but for me personally, it's very important because I heard a lot of stories from my other mostly female friends, but not only, who are like, for instance, right now emerging artists, DJs, and producers, who told me that, you know what, like I never considered, for instance, music production or like being actually interested in the music as something I can do, because every time I was like attending club nights, or I was going to the club, or I was I don't know, like going to some gigs or concerts, I always mostly saw male artists. So I just thought that it's not for me. And there's way more stories like this. And that's why I think it's also extremely important to create the space and to also say to the people that this is a space for you. You can come and you can enjoy and you can learn and like just do this. So that's before, yeah, I just wanted to kind of show you more or less how it actually really looks like and how do we work. Of course, all of these workshops happened before COVID and before pandemic. And right now, during the pandemic, we also did some workshop sessions, and they were mostly online. So we also had to switch the medium, which is also pretty interesting, like, and have some limitations, but also like opens a lot of other stuff, like a lot of new opportunities. And I wanted to talk about what, because we are a collective, like we are a platform, a collective. What does it mean to be a collective? It means like to work with other people, like to build some sort of a infrastructure in a way. And it sounds a little bit, it might sound silly, like, or like very like like cliche or very easy at the beginning, that yeah, collective means just working with people. And of course it's this, but for me, like for instance, for today I prepared for you this like quote which I found very powerful, which means rehearse how to be many. And for me, this is the quote by Sibyl Peters. She's a philosopher and a researcher. I think she's German, but I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, I was introduced to this quote by other Polish feminist scholar Ewa Majewska, and I think it's amazing quote. Like rehearse how to be many. Also, in a way, um, like queering the scene. So we work with other people. Like there's like 6 of us inside the collective, but we also build our platform to other people as well. So it means that, for instance, why we're having a podcast series, it's not about us in a way. It's not about me, Paulina, in the podcast series. It's also about inviting other people and giving them the opportunity to show, or like to give them some sort of a spotlight as well. And it's very often it happens that we have to we have to embrace the other people, and also the fact that they come from a different context or like different backgrounds, and they are just different than we are, because like I don't know, maybe I identify as a woman, but then I work with a person who is queer, and like how we gonna make it work together, how we gonna rehearse how to be many, and like to actually build the word, and like in this context music scene, which can be for everyone, so no one can feel excluded from the scene itself. I think it's this metaphor of rehearsing and like being like a many. It's also very political in a way, and like we can apply it also to this very like bigger layer of like society, and like how to actually include queer people, trans people, female people, like I don't know, women, like all of the minorities, like who for such a long time was like underrepresented in a way. So I think it's a beautiful quote, and I wanted to really share it with you. And as I said, like here, I also like made some sort of a points, like what does it mean to work as a collective, and what does it also mean to rehearse how to be many. So it's like queering the scene, and by this queering I mean being different, but also letting these differences meet and like coexist together in a space, and like also show these differences and like enjoy them together and celebrate it. We have such a variety and like of experiences, contexts, backgrounds, I don't know, music like tastes, or like everything. And I think it also in a way really applied to our collective, to Oramics, because yeah, there are 6 of us, and we basically each of us comes from a completely different background. um, I emerged in a more like kind of an experimental club scene, I would say. But for instance, Malaherba, were also supposed to be with us today. Um, they are like really like coming more from this like folk archives, and like actually querying the archives, and what is the contemporary figure of witch, and how we actually, for instance, um, what is witchcraft these days. So they also have a completely different approach towards music. And this is also, or like for instance, Isent, who she's a co-founder of Oramics. She emerged from a techno scene in Poland, and she's been active in a techno scene for already, I don't know, more than 10 years easily. So I think it's also interesting. Oramics itself is already like letting this all differences meet and like coexist in a one space, because we are all different, and we also older and younger, so but we still can work together and like make really nice stuff. So then what I also said, it's about representation, and like giving other people actually like a chance to show their music, to record a podcast, I don't know, to invite, like to book the other people to play, to also maybe invite people to actually organize a workshop, which is also in a way some sort of a representation. How do we choose these people, and like what we want to create. And it's all about building this platform, like, which is Oramix. But also, yeah, exactly, being open for other stories, other narrative, other bodies, other contexts, creating resources, which I'm gonna talk about a little bit later, and what does it exactly mean. But also sharing knowledge, and this is this educational aspect, like for instance, like having workshops and organizing workshops, which is also very, very important. Then what Kajetan briefly said about intersectionality, like what does it mean basically, intersectionality? It means that we as Oramix, we consider ourselves a music platform, but it's not that we are only limited like to music itself. We also consider ourselves more or less more as a political activists, or like music activists. So we also perceive club or like music scene as a political space, and we want to address it as a political space. So saying that building safer spaces is also like a practice, and it's like logistic in a way. So this is also intersectionality for us, and I think it's a good example of this. I'm gonna show you in a second, when the Polish music scene like kind of gathered together during the protests in Warsaw last summer, when we had like it was protest against homophobia in Poland. And then music scene, like people who are actively involved, they say, hey, let's gather together and let's go there as a music scene. But also, like, there were a lot of techno protests. So how techno, or like for instance music in general, and like political activism can go together. So this is something really interesting, and I think this is something we should kind of politically also go towards when thinking about the future. Then we have being against gatekeeping and whitewashing practices. I'm also going to talk about this later. What does it exactly mean? But, or maybe briefly now, but gatekeeping is basically this practice, not only in music scene, you can easily refer it to any other, I would say, scene, I don't know, visual scene, film scene, whatever. I'm going to talk about music scene. Is like not letting other people enter, like, I don't know, some sort of this. When you have people who are performing, like you're booking people, you have a group of DJs or like artists, you're not gonna like let new people come in and perform. So this is gatekeeping. You're standing in front of the gate and you don't want to let other people come and show their music, like taste or like whatever, their talents, right? So we are against this, and this is why we also organize exactly again workshops to encourage people to enter this scene, and also like be it more open, be it more vary, be more open, be more vary, and bigger in a way, also in this having these different voices. And whitewashing is another problem. I'm gonna talk about it a little bit later when we will introduce you to the topic of like Eastern and Central Europe, and why this is our like latest focus as a platform. And then exactly again, it's focusing on a local scene, but also appreciating the local scene. And here I also have this photo, what I already said before: we dance together, we fight together. It's the slogan which emerged first in Tbilisi in 2018, I think, during the also protest against police, which are like in a very kind of a brutal way, how we say it, interrogating the clubs in Tbilisi. So it was like it emerged from there. Then it became like a global slogan for the music scene worldwide, I would say, as well. So this is like, for me, like a very good example of this intersectionality, and like to see how the music scene can also be involved in political activism, and like to make a statement that we are against homophobia and we want everyone to feel good during like parties or like in club or like during the concerts or gigs. This is another one also like from the same period, but this one is from Poznań, from another city in Poland, which I also wanted to show to you. And then I'm gonna talk about our art residency we did, and I think this is a really good example of like what it actually means to queer the scene, and what does it mean when there are different queer bodies, and we are just different because we come from different backgrounds and different contexts, and what happened when we actually meet and how we can cooperate together. So first, a little bit of an introduction about what is this and what we are looking at. During last summer, in July and August, we were invited by one of the Polish Contemporary Museum for a 3 week long art residency, which is called To Be Real. And this program is basically trying to investigate the connection between art, club, and rave culture, and like also the politics of it. And exactly like radical potential for change on this more societal level, let's say. We were invited as Oramics, so as an entire group, and we worked together with two other artists. One is Cebulec, he's a visual artist, and the other person is a German/Swiss choreographer, Nils Amadeus Lange. So basically, there were like 3 medium which met. We as Oramics as a music platform, Cebulec as a visual artist, and Nils as a choreography artist. So we had to cooperate together and work together and like see for 3 weeks what we can actually do. And so we were working for 3 weeks, and then we had like this grand finale. So I call it this way, but it was basically all night long performative installation, which we had a lot of DJ sets and also like choreography performances, but not only. So it was like this very multimedia, let's say, installation or night. And our like starting point for the entire residency was like that because it was in Poland and we wanted to do something about Poland and about Polish tradition and history. And we said, okay, this is the time that we're gonna create some sort of this very metaphorical ritual to undo the so-called LGBT free zones in Poland. So basically to also again to make a statement that we are against the homophobia which is happening in our country, and through art and through the medium we are building, we are actively like involved in, we're gonna do something else. So it was this very, very long night. You can see, for instance, here's Kajetan taking part in a in a ritual with this like long ribbon. And here is like another drag queen drag artist. They are Belarusian, I think. Like also like being like in this some sort of a performative situation and performing during the entire night. This is me and Kajetan. We played DJ sets, and also what is extremely interesting and also funny is that we ordered this huge bouncy castle. You can see, I mean, this photo is not amazing, but you can see it here. So for the entire night, you can just go and bounce inside. And why we decided to order the castle, it was because this museum is called the Castle. So we wanted to have this, like some sort of a play with the figure of the museum itself. And why am I actually talking about this, and like why is it interesting to talk about? Is because this residency was, at least for me, very breaking. That we all met from a completely different like background. Like there are Polish people, but there are people from Switzerland with a like completely different approach towards art, and how we actually gonna produce something together. We are so different in this. Like we want to do something about Polish history, but then this person maybe is not really involved into this because it comes from a completely different country. And I must say that it was very interesting process of 3 weeks trying to actually bond together and see what we can build. So in the end, we also realized that, okay, let's do a lot of different stuff together and merge this into a one long night. So instead of trying to, create like something like a one huge final work, like final to deliver final, I don't know, maybe a performance piece or theater piece. No, let's go against this. Let's try to show each of us individually, but also as a group. And I think this is also about discovering the scene and rehearsing as many in a way to embrace that we are different, but also like build something together. And here you can see that we also like did these huge banners, like we just hang them on the castle. And that was the introduction for me. What do I understand as working as a collective? And so kind of at this part. And now I think Kajetan is going to talk a little bit about our Oramics birthday situation, right?
Yes, exactly. So our birthday is a pretty important piece that we did last year as well, because it tied in with with what we did in the residency a little bit, but it also had to be a completely different set because of the pandemic, and that was a new thing for everyone back then. It was the end of the first lockdown in Poland, so we couldn't really make a great club night as the one that Paulina showed in the photos before. So we were not sure what the situation in the clubs was going to be, but we didn't really want to produce another DJ stream or another live stream per se. The scene in a way at the beginning of the lockdown became obsessed with creating this disposable content that would be there for an hour in the internet, and everything moved away really fast. So we really tried to focus on creating something more lasting and more and something that could be accessed afterwards. And we decided to provide artists with an opportunity to create a new collaborative and experimental artwork. We actually received a grant from Krytyka Polityczna, which is like a leftist think tank. So we were able to properly reimburse the artists for their work. And it was actually the first time that we received a bigger grant, and it was like a very a huge deal for us, and also because we argued that the club scene, as Paulina said, is a part of the cultural and artistic field and should be recognized as such. Receiving this grant actually supported the narrative that club scene is a part of this bigger thing that you call culture. It's just a newer and a fresh part, and our residency at the Center for Contemporary Arts also kind of reinforced that. It created a club kind of, I don't want to say place, but like an environment that let people be themselves and let them react to what was happening in Poland right then politically. But enough about that. We actually invited over 40 femme, queer, and non-binary artists that were almost exclusively from Central and Eastern Europe. We had 12 music producers and sound artists who created mixes or live music. And that in turn inspired 12 visual artists and VJs to create films and animations. And then we had 12 writers, which were poets, journalists, culture critics, to write stories, essays, or poems responding to the music and visual stimuli. And this part was actually curated by Mala Herba, who cannot be with us today, but she actually wrote a bit of a part of this lecture that I'm gonna read you later on. And this idea was to create like the dialogue between different art forms. So this goes back again to intersectionality, and create connection between artists from Central and Eastern Europe in times of isolation and for many people financial precarity. So it was amazing that we could actually pay the artists properly, and in a way motivate them to keep creating even though everything else around us stood still. There was also workshops, online workshops, which were also free, had a free price. Our colleague Monster created a CDJ manual and a guide on how to start DJing. So if anyone had any kind of DJ equipment or access to it, could start DJing on their own without really having to go to offline workshops. So it was a really huge project. We actually learned a lot during the project as well. We hit a couple of snafus. So not everything went as we planned, but that's also the nature of creating a DIY collective, that each of us has a different area of expertise, but also we learn from our own mistakes, and it's okay. Not everything has to be perfect. Not everything has to be, as professional as like commercial spaces, because if you strive for that, you're never going to get there. It's absolutely unrealistic with the budgets and the workforce that you have. So if you're working in a DIY collective, you should definitely keep that in mind, and let the perfectionism stay in other areas of your work. So that we also had a discussion about Central and Eastern European artists, which Paulina is going to talk about in a second, and the whole thing actually later aired in Radio Capitał, which is also a DIY radio that actually grew for like almost 2 years now into a big independent media outlet. So now Paulina is going to tell you about the discussion and representation of Central and Eastern European artists.
Yes, and I'm gonna do my amazing screen sharing again. So yes, so Oramic's third birthday, it was a huge event, online event, and I must say, working on online events, it's sometimes much more actually difficult, and it requires more than actually throwing a party in a club. It was really a lot of work. And that was the time, like exactly as Kajetan said, that it was during the pandemic. So the pandemic hit in March, and our birthday is usually around April. And we're like, okay, but we don't know what to do, and everyone, like entire world was so deoriented, because of this pandemic, and like what the hell is this? And we said, okay, but it's maybe also a good opportunity to try something else. Like, okay, let's see what we can actually do online and in the internet. And we decided to go with this slogan: "Your periphery is our center." And here you can also see the merge of us, which is like your periphery is my center. So we were kind of in between these two. But the most important, like, it was the time that we wanted to focus on us and like on our scene, on our Polish scene, but also to have a little bit broader look at our region in general, And I think this slogan, "Your periphery is my center," is extremely also very strong and metaphorical, and also like drawing this attention to the peripheries, and also like saying that this is where do we live, and like we have to a little bit maybe stand against the westernization of the scene in general, and like try to build our infrastructure in Poland, in Czechia, I don't know, in Belarus, in Russia, in Ukraine, in Romania, in Hungary, whatever, like to build our own connections and like try to work it out together instead of all the time looking towards West and like what is happening in Amsterdam, London, or Berlin. So we decided that this is the time to do this. And because it's online, maybe it's also a good opportunity to invite artists it would be really difficult for us to invite. So we invited people from Russia, like from Ukraine, for instance, or like, I don't know, from Serbia to participate in our huge program. And because it was online, it was possible to do this, right? Otherwise, it would be for us way too much hassle to try to bring these people physically to Poland. So I think it was also a great opportunity to kind of try a different medium and like what we can actually do online with the live streaming and all of this thing which emerged during the pandemic. So here you can have some sort of a look at the identity of the birthday. And now I'm going to talk about representation of Central and Eastern Europe and European artists and how it actually happened that we decided to go for this topic. So here there is a quote from Mala Herba, which I found very kind of fitting the topic. And they said, just before the pandemic, I had a feeling that shit was going to hit the fan really soon because we had more and more promoters and DJs. People were getting more and more hyped, bringing headliners from Berlin and getting paid more than what my mom makes in a month. And it was really waiting on us. And I think it's extremely interesting to see exactly like what Mara Herba brought in this quote is like this hype and like how the mainstream media are kind of using their spotlights exactly to hype certain like artists, and how then other artists or our regions are completely underrepresented, and what we can do as a platform to change this, or at least to draw attention towards our region. And then the other problem is like this whitewashing of the scene, but also the economical border, because here we're also talking about the physical borders, but also economical borders. Because, for instance, Poland, okay, we are next to Germany, but the minimum wage in Poland is completely different than Germany. And then when we want to host an artist from Germany or maybe from UK or I don't know, France, whatever, and then we want to book this person to play, and then we hear, hi, but like my fee is like 800 euros, and then you have to on top of this cover the transportation costs, accommodation and everything, which in the end is like a lot of money. And then at some point you have this realization that you're in front of the screen reading this email and you're like, okay, this is so much money. You have to imagine that it's a completely different reality here, and maybe we cannot really pay you 800 euros because the currency is different, and we don't and for like the context is completely different, right? So I think that was already around this was already, we already had this idea of that something is not really working well here and something has to be changed. And then the pandemic happened, which in a very interesting way, I think, focused everyone on the local scenes. And then it was this huge conversation about, okay, but look, people, like there is pandemic, clubs are like mostly closed in a way. We cannot really book anyone from Berlin because the borders are closed. So the only people we can book are the local artists. And then it was this first some sort of a wave of hope that, oh, that's great, because maybe this will finally bring attention towards this problem. That it doesn't maybe make sense so often to advertise your party as Berlin techno, because I don't know if this is the same in Turkey, but in Poland it happens sometimes that you have clubs who are in the title of the event on Facebook, they're kind of trying to catch more of the people to come, or to draw their attention towards the event by saying that, hey, there will be a techno from Berlin playing, because it's already a labor. It's this empty gesture in a way, just for people to actually come.
I'm sorry for interrupting you. Like, yes, you have the mantra also, like within Czech Republic and Slovakia, of this like Berliner and Berghain style of techno.
Exactly, and I think this is ridiculous in a way because first of all, it was very funny to see this, like why are you guys doing this, like but this is a real thing, and they use it to advertise and promote their events to techno from Berlin, and then you don't even know who plays or like what's going to happen during this club night. You just go because it's a techno from Berlin, so it's this like weird label. And then these people are getting paid enormous amount of money, while we have our local talents who are completely, or like regional talents, let's say, who are completely underrepresented. So yes, and again, like when I was talking about that, here we actually arrived to the problematic topic of a border, like economic border, what I just said about like fee and like just completely different economic realities, but also the physical border, because it was extremely interesting for me to observe during the pandemic when Brexit was also happening, like it was closer, getting closer to this actually finite deadline that UK has to decide on something finally. And then on Instagram, I saw this a lot of this like Instagram stories saying that, oh no, Brexit will like UK will have to close the borders because of Brexit, and then artists won't be able to travel freely, like to move from UK to, I don't know, Poland, for instance, like by plane, because there will be more, it might be more problematic. And then I was like reading all of this stuff on Instagram. I was like, okay, but like, have you guys ever think about that the artists from Russia, for instance, like they need to take a visa, it's much more problematic thing, or like from Ukraine, or to fly someone from Ukraine to Western countries. And that's why this border really exists in a way, and people don't want to pay more, like promoters from Western countries, they don't want to pay more to actually bring the people from East, because it's like way too problematic. But then when Brexit happened, everything was like so panicking about this poor artist from UK, which is of course not like it's not ideal situation. It's not nothing against UK, but then it's just very interesting where do we actually focus, and like this was happening in our region for such a long time, and no one ever like even noticed that no one is booking artists from Eastern and Central Europe, but maybe all the time from Western countries. So this. And then also another quote from Malahirba, which I also think is really good. They say, in the 90s, it was this folk countryside leisure, and only recently, a decade or 2 decades ago, become more connected to the big city culture and struggles. So this is this kind of a whitewashing situation, but I'm going to talk about it in a second. First, I will tell you that these quotes, they come from the conversation for a UOVC reader. It's like a Lithuanian platform, and they also released this. If you are interested, you can Google it. There is this reader for free, and they have a lot of different conversation inside. So, for instance, our conversation I also took part in. As a member of Oramix, was about caring labor and mutual aid in queer and people of color club communities. So they basically come from there. It's a very interesting reader, so I recommend a lot. And then exactly like what is happening here, like how we actually lost this, like we got completely detached in a way from the roots of the music itself, like of our like context and regional music. And of course it all happened historically, like with the infrastructure and the the rise of the big cities, and how they also built this like huge club infrastructure, that you have promoters, you have bookers, you have artists, and like this is all like a huge body, like a huge organism which works together. But then there's like this whitewashing, right? So like I don't know, like the electronic music scene, more or less, in Poland arrived from Western countries, and then everything is just like like we copy this in a way, or like trying to do this, or like trying to implement it in within our own culture. But then maybe at some point it's also good to ask yourself a question that, okay, but do we actually have something here, and maybe we can also draw some inspiration from the stuff from our like context. And Mala Herba is a very interesting, I would say, example of this, because they are very interested in actually working with archives, and like as I mentioned before, this figure of the witch and what is actually what does it mean to do a witchcraft, and to also bring these very very old narrations, like from the witches in Poland, like back in the history, and like these rituals and this magic and everything. So I would say that her artistic practice is something like which really it's interesting, and yeah, for sure I recommend also to check it out. And then, so we realized this. So we realized basically that, okay, there's a problem, right? So we are in Poland. People want so much money for fee. Like, what's wrong with our local scene? Like, where is this appreciation towards our local artists? And then as a Oramix, we also wanted to kind of do something about this. So instead of only preparing this music program / audiovisual program, we also decided that maybe it's a good time to actually talk, and to try to build alliances. So we wrote this panel discussion, which was titled Eastern Bloc After the Pandemic, Strengthening Local Scenes and the Cooperation, and also Eastern Bloc. It's also like a huge, some sort of umbrella term, I would say. But at some point, we decided that there is something which unites us all, like there is something which unites Poland, or like with Ukraine, or like, I don't know, like with Czechia, or like with Slovakia, or like I don't know, maybe even with Armenia, in a way, that we all come from this post-Soviet situation, and there is this economic border, and we just like, there is a difference between our region and like economically than Western countries. So we wanted to also look at this in this very like broad perspective. What is Eastern Bloc, and how we can actually talk about our experiences together. So basically, we organized this discussion, and it was the, I think, first discussion. Yeah, it was the first panel discussion we organized as Oramix. We invited like people from different countries. We invited artists, promoters, bookers, people like who worked in clubs, who like their daily job is to book people. So they like really worked with agents and this entire infrastructure. People who are running labels, but people who are also running like platform as Oramix, but in different countries. So yeah, you can see here are the guests and countries where they're coming from. And yeah, we are basically thinking, okay, so what are the experiences, and how we can build this solidarity between us, and like create this alternative, our periphery, this our outside from this Western gaze, which is constantly like there in a way. So yeah, it was like this very important thing to also talk about the collaboration, and like we know each other already, so why not in the future, maybe when the pandemic is over, we can collaborate and we can see how we can exchange this entire music situation going on in our region. So yeah, the discussion is on SoundCloud. It's 2 hours long, but if you are interested, we are basically discussing about these topics. And then we arrived to I will just quickly check the time, but it's fine. I will quickly talk about this podcast research. So as a support to our debate, we also made some sort of a research to see what is the problem. So basically, we ask ourselves a question: how visible our scene actually is. And then it was released like almost a year ago, on the 10th of July. But what we did was that we took like last 100 podcasts from like 3, in my opinion, major mainstream platforms, like music platforms, which is Resident Advisor, Crack Magazine, but also Fact, I think. Let me have a look. Yes, Fact Magazine. And we tracked everything. So basically, we saw this, okay, there's this last 100 podcasts, where they are coming from, where are the artists from? And then we like, based on this, we build this infographics to actually visualize the problem as well. So here you can see that Resident Advisor released only 4 podcasts by artists from Eastern Europe. Crack Magazine released 6 mixes, and Fact released 2 mixes. And then we just saw this, and we just also ask ourselves like question, what is the problem? You know, why still, for instance, UK and US like gets the most attention, or like the biggest numbers? Because we are talking about podcasts. You don't need to fly a person or artist to any country. It's a purely online situation. You can like ask a person or invite a person to record a mix. So you don't need any like financial burden, you know, to do this. So that was like this this is making these resources, what I said before about creating resources and sharing them in a way. This is like sharing knowledge and also creating this to draw the attention and to show the problem. And yeah, this is in numbers more or less how visible our scene actually was, you know. And then this is the last thing I'm going to talk about, but I think it's Kajetan right now wanted to say something.
Sure. I was actually thinking I would talk a little bit about my artistic practice in general and a queer practice in music a little bit, because I'm pretty sure it would come useful to both students of the Brno University and anyone who's else is watching. I've been producing music for almost 18 years now. I've started as a producer, and then I went on to DJing also. I've been DJing for 14 years. And I've had a couple of different parts to the career. Let's call it that. Maybe I would probably call it a career only for like 2 or 3 last years. But I've always been trying to work towards actually earning a living from music, which I've been doing for, I don't know, maybe 3 years now. So at first I was really into electro music, and I was it was my kind of therapy at the beginning. I was studying in Scotland, which was a foreign country. I didn't really have any friends there, and I didn't really feel at home there. I didn't really feel welcome. So it was spending time on producing the music was actually a way of making myself feel useful and in a way. And it was kind of funny because I always do 2 things at once. I do music, but I also do graphic design. And I tend to fluctuate between the 2. So when I was there, I was studying graphic design, and I was really, really interested in music. So my graphic design studies went by the wayside because I was spending so much time producing my music. And then when I came back to Warsaw, I went to postgrad in sound design, and actually it was a completely opposite situation. So I was made to work on sound, but I was going back to graphics over and over and over again because it was something that was outside of the daily routine that I was doing. Back in 2013, I started doing this project called Pleśni, which is you can translate it roughly as molds. So it's something very old in a way. It's a project that was connecting electronic music and everything that I was doing by then to actually working with Polish and Eastern music archives. So I invited, I'm a vocalist myself, and I also invited 6 other traditional singers to create this polyphonic traditional singing, and then mix it into the electronic music that I was doing, which also goes back to this idea of finding what's unique in our own local and regional scene and making it work in a context that would be understandable for young people, for people from outside of our region, making it actually work for us. And of course, I don't want to say that we need to. There's other people doing like the traditional thing one to one, which is like, you know, without any kind of translation or hybridization, so to say, which I wasn't really interested in. I wasn't really interested in singing all of the songs as they were sang hundreds of years ago. But I wanted to bring that into the modern age and actually maybe a little bit reignite the love for these melodies. I should actually probably play you a little excerpt of that. So yeah, I don't want to bore you right now, so I'm just gonna present short snippets of the stuff that I'm talking about. But yeah, that's the thing that we came out back in 2013 with, and this was also my first experience of working with a major label, and I was very discouraged by that. They basically took a product that we created that was already done and tried profiting from that without putting any promotion in, and basically just ignoring us in terms of any kind of investment in our work. So it was already back then when we started thinking about releasing music in a DIY way, or actually presenting it outside of the context of commercialization of the music industry. Then I actually got probably 5-year-long artistic block, which I also would like to talk about, because for me it was one of the most debilitating things that I could have experienced, and thankfully I'm way over it now. But I'd like to talk about that to maybe share my views on it and how I overcame that. Of course, the main importance of that is having a support system, which working in a collective is a lot easier, of course, but also friends, family, networking with your fellow artists who motivate you, and motivating each other is a really important thing. I probably wouldn't have produced my last EP if it wasn't for people who really believed in me and told me, you can do it, just stop thinking about all the unnecessary things. I really believe in the importance of treating your artistic work as a job. Sometimes people tend to romanticize artistic activities and wait for the ideas to come to you, or for some kind of a divine intervention to come and tell you what you need to do. From my experience, it's not really that. It's not really the way that it's portrayed in literature. You actually need to sit down and start doing something, and then the inspiration comes. Because if you just keep thinking about it, it's never going to come out. And I've actually been calling myself a musician for these 5 years that I haven't produced one note of music during that. and I was feeling really bad about that also. We're not creating in a vacuum, you know. So we also need to inspire ourselves. We need to listen to a lot of. Of course, I'm talking about music, but you can relate that to any other artistic activity. So listening to other music, trying to figure out what excites us, like analyzing that. For example, I work in a way. If I know that I'm gonna be sitting down and creating something, at first I do this like quick run of, I listen to things that I find interesting for some reason, and I call this like cleaning the connections. And then the only thing that's left is to overcome this like perfectionist mindset, because if you fear that the outcome of your work is not going to be perfect, then you can't start working at all. So basically what I'm saying is just sit down and start doing something, because a blank page is not conducive to any artistic activity at all. So once you start putting something on there and you start, even if you don't like it, it's going to start morphing, you know. Also, don't be precious about your artistic outputs. If you have created something in like 3 hours and you're afraid to touch it because you're afraid of spoiling it, just put that aside, create another file, and that liberates you to, you know, completely destroy what you've created. And sometimes this is the best way of you know, getting the results that you want. Actually, like morphing and mixing everything together. Sometimes my tracks are created from 2 or 3 ideas from 3 different sessions, and I try to pitch them up and down and you know, match the tempos and put them in one context, so that they become a lot more cohesive. So yeah, we need to overcome this tendency to constantly analyze every part of your art in terms of quality, quantity, in terms of marketability or perceived professionalism. I also, could you please mute your microphones, guys? Thank you. I also found it really odd that I started putting all this pressure on myself, seeing other friends of mine that were getting successful in music, and saying to myself, oh, they're already like 30, they're 30 and they've already had their first big album come out by the time, you know. And that was even worse for me, because that was creating even more pressure to create something that was completely perfect and perfectly marketable, and you know, that would wow all of the professional musicians, and that's not the way to go, really. I would also like to touch a little bit upon the fact that we're being socialized not to believe in our professionalism or our technical abilities as women or as queer people. And queer and trash style has traditionally not been taken very seriously. It's been marginalized and patronized and seen as unprofessional, not polished. So the need to collaborate between queer artists who understand this style and this way of work is very, very important as well. Surround yourself with people who understand what you're doing. And I also believe that queer communities under duress, so in the hardest times, usually have been responsible for so many shifts in the artistic landscape. So I'd also like to encourage the scene to come up with new ways of expressing ourselves. Experimental doesn't mean bad or hard to sell. You just need to you know, take the expectations, both your expectations and the perceived expectations of the music industry, and put them by the wayside. Just do your thing. And the last thing I'd like to talk about, because I think we're shortly running out of time, is music activism. I know it sounds funny, and I don't really like using the word activist when I'm talking about myself, but it's just the fact of rooting your artistic experience and artistic practice in what's happening around you. As I said, we're not living in a vacuum. We're not creating in a vacuum. So art has always been political, and you don't need to be afraid to step away from that. Sorry, I actually said the completely opposite thing that I wanted to say. We shouldn't be afraid to be political in our art. We've actually had a year, all year long in Poland. We had protests, and people have been lending their art to the protests and playing, DJing at protests, giving them, energy, and cooperating with these anti-fascist samba drummers that have been traditionally the driving force behind the protests. We've been also doing streams with Brutaż, which is also a Polish collective, streams for the homeless, which are like cook and play events. There's a group of people who are cooking food for the homeless, and then going to a certain place and feeding them, whereas another group is doing a DJ stream with a charity fundraising. And there's also been a huge discussion. I don't want to go into detail right now because I always get very emotional when I talk about this, but there's also been a huge discussion about ethics surrounding plague parties. So playing plague raves and hijacking the context of illegal raves that were, traditionally anti-system, but they were not rooted in putting people in danger to earn money, which is like a completely, different context. So yeah. I think that's about. Oh yeah, sorry. One last thing. I've also been creating this other collective that's called Ciężki Brokat, and as Paulina was talking about creating safer spaces before, for a couple of years, for 3 years now, we've been trying to create safer spaces for queers in Warsaw, especially in terms of club nights, and right now we're starting with open air safer spaces, which is a little bit more difficult, but we're making progress. And we also try to underlining the importance of drug testing during parties. So there's like a policy of openness, because many clubs or many collectives or promoters try to sweep that part of club nights under the rug and pretend as if it's not happening. Whereas we really believe that there's a responsibility to raise that awareness and to give people the means of doing all of that safely. Because if we don't, and if we pretend that the problem isn't there, they're going to do it on their own terms, and there's going to be many more problems surrounding that. Yeah, I guess that's what I wanted to say. So Paulina, over to you.
I wanted to ask if should we go to questions right now. I can still talk about 2 more projects, but I don't know, maybe there are already some questions some people want to ask.
Actually, it's up to you, but yes, of course, please, if you have any questions, feel free to ask directly to the conversation or write the question to the chat. Actually, I would like to point to the thing of how to build a safer space within the club, because oftenly you have the policy where you are entering the club, and I don't know, for example, you're standing in the queue and you have the big paper or a poster with no, 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 which is also I think we all know it, which is also making not really welcome environment at some point. So
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yes, like my question is like how to, or like how you are practically avoiding like these moments.
Do you want to say something about this, Kaidan?
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, this is like a very lazy approach, I think, because it's very easy to post on your event page or put up a poster that says no homophobia, no transphobia, no sexism, no violence. It is, of course, a very important first step, the communication, because if you communicate unambiguously that this is a space that is going to take care of this, and the staff are going to react, then this is like a very important first step, of course. But then the next steps that have to be taken for it to actually become an active, safer space are so many more, and they're so much more important. You know, you have to train your staff, both the doorman and the selector and the bar staff. You have to ensure that someone is going around once in a while and checking if nothing bad is happening. You have to ensure that you have some kind of framework to actually counteract these actions. So if there's an occurrence of I don't know, sexual violence during your club night, which like you can't avoid. We can't, like, we as Oramics can't call our spaces safe spaces because we know that we can't really make them 100% safe. Then you have to know what to do next, where to refer that person, you know. Also talking to people, to bouncers or to security, and telling them, you know, it's not the 20th century anymore. You can't, if someone is drunk and is, for example, passes out or starts vomiting, you can't throw them out of the club, like putting the responsibility outside of the zone. You know, you have to actually make it a safer space and help them if that happens. So it is really about creating a whole new infrastructure in terms of club nights. Paulina?
Yeah, I see we have one more question from Victoria, which I'm gonna go to in a second. But first, about this question, like how to actually implement these policies, this like safer space policies. It's, yeah, exactly. It's not that easy, I would say. It requires, first of all, like some sort of engagement also from the club staff and like people who are involved into the infrastructure. So as Oramics, we also did twice. We prepared these workshops only for club members, for like only for club members, staff, like club staff, and promoters and bookers, with a person who is how to say, who's really aware like of like how this dynamics works inside the club space. So this was like a trained person, and we did it twice. We did it in Poznań, I think, and in Krakow. And it was nice. It's a very small kind of a workshop. It's only 5, 6, I don't know, 10 people. It really depends because it's for a very close community of actually club owners and like people who are running this club thing. And then exactly what Kajetan said, that it basically requires entire like training situation and having like a framework. So you have to feel safe to report the abusive behavior when it's happening inside the club. So let's say that if I am in a club and something is happening towards me, I should feel totally safe or maybe good with the like approaching like the bartenders or I don't know, the security people, to actually, or DJs for instance as well. Like I think it's yeah, also people like musicians kinda, but mostly we talk about people like at the doors or like at the bar, to say, hey, something like this happened, I would like you to react. So then you have, yeah, this entire framework. It has to be also incorporated kinda, exactly what Kajetan said. So that's how you can implement this, I would say. And then in the chat there is this question about can you explain what actually means your periphery is yours? your periphery is my center. This is my center or our center. Yeah, we had it twice. Well, basically, I came across this slogan. I'm working in a bookshop, and I found this booklet from a socialist, some kind of a socialist situation, like a reader, and they also used this as a slogan. And I was like immediately I fell in love with this. But basically, it means that Eastern and Central Europe is perceived outside of it's like located kind of in this metaphorical way outside than Western countries. So we are not like a part of, we are like kind of in a way Europe, but there is West and East, right? And then we are very often kind of portrayed as like this outside of the West. So we have like, we are the periphery. So this kind of a slogan, your periphery is my center, means that what is periphery for you, for instance, like for the Western countries, is actually what is my center, is where I'm located and when I'm around. So it's kind of bringing this discussion about peripheries, but also like, yeah, basically the borders and this gaze. So how we perceive Western and East. So it is some sort of in my opinion, very powerful word gameplay going on. Like your periphery, what is periphery for you is for me like the place I live, and this is my center. So this is how I understand this.
Okay, I will continue with another question from the chat from Antonia. Anthony is like trying to build also it's building, I'm sorry, a queer platform called within Czech Republic, and she's curious about like how you organize your collective, especially being in different countries in Corona. Like, do you have any kind of forum or calls or etc.?
Yes, we do video calls, just like this one, because we found that the tools that are being presented to us like very readily, such as Facebook, Facebook groups or Messenger, are very counterproductive, because they are mostly tools that are designed to keep your attention, but keep it on the level, on a very like surface level. So you keep getting these distractions over there, and also Messenger is like typing chats is a very counterproductive way of communicating, because it doesn't really convey emotions, and working in a collective where there's sometimes some kind of friction or tension, working on Messenger really exacerbates these things. So we try to set dates for these video chats and talk, and then also make quite a detailed agenda for every meeting, so that we don't spend hours and hours just like milling over things that should have been done quicker. So it's really this kind of efficiency in terms of working through the internet, because of course, as you pointed out, we're in different countries and there's coronavirus. Each and every person in Poland is also from a different city, so we couldn't really be meeting on a regular basis. So even before Corona, we used to do that.
I see there is one more question. I read it a few times. I'm not fully sure if I understand what do you mean by hard power / soft power. But if you are asking about if we some sort of found a success in our in the way how we work and how we implement or try to implement our practices or strategies or resources or knowledge, I would say that I'm pretty sure that we've been on the scene for 4 years already, and I think we kind of draw bit of attention towards the lineup in the gender balance in lineups, but also like in a way, I think like create this awareness. I think this is also what we managed to bring. It's not something you can fully measure, so this is very difficult because like when you work as a collective and like more like on this kind of a bit in a way abstract level, you like still do a lot of stuff, like you still like create or design like resources, or like you through workshops, or like going into this education like also aspect and context, but it's sometimes a little bit difficult to actually fully measure it, like if it's not like something which is immediately there. But for sure, for instance, like we have, this is what I wanted to talk about. We also did one project about Belarus, which was called Highlight Belarus, which also started from the fact that we like Belarus is like basically next to Poland, right? And it's such a huge also difference between like two countries, but it's such a close, it's so close. Like we even have like Belarusian roots in a way, some of the people in Poland as well, or we have Belarusian minority also coming to work in Poland or to live in Poland. And we're at some point so shocked in a way, like in an emotional way, what is happening just behind the Polish border. And we had the feeling that there is not enough attention towards what is going on, that people are protesting for more than like, I don't know, 150 days on the streets. So we also did a project just about Belarus, and we invited 4 artists to contribute a guest mix for us. And it's like still maybe not a huge thing. We also like, but it's something. It's just like drawing the attention also like for the other media and like on like social media in a way. So I would say this, but I don't know if Kajetan, you want to kind of also contribute to this.
I would reiterate that we definitely made a difference. You can even see female or queer artists that that came up from Oramix workshops like 3 or 4 years ago, making huge waves now, which is like amazing. You can look at VTSS, who started Oramix and is now like a huge entity in the music in the DJ world as well. But in terms of changing political circumstances, we are doing this. All of us were doing this before we came to Oramix, and this is somehow written into our also personal lives. I think maybe not all of us. I don't want to speak for the whole collective, but many of us used to do that, and we keep doing that using the platform that we achieved by joining Oramix, I've actually, this is really funny, but well, maybe not that funny, but I've actually been arrested during our residency that Paulina was talking about, and there was a real possibility that I couldn't make it to the grand finale to play and to help with the artistic side of the project. So in a way, all of that intertwines, because the fact that I got arrested during that time because of a queer protest that I was taking part in gave so much more meaning to what happened later on in the night. It somehow connects the two worlds, and I know it's like such a cliche to say that music can change the world around you, but I really find it to be true.
I think it's also what Kajetan said about this, that because you cannot measure the influence, right? This is what I said, that it's sometimes also there's maybe it's also good to talk about this frustrating part of being working in a collective or in a platform, which is like do it yourself, it's an underground situation, because you don't have the reward in a way immediately. So if you like, I don't know, if you want to make a dinner and you cooked the dinner. So like you have the final result maybe pretty soon, and you can be happy or unhappy, but you have something to actually measure, or like you can, like embrace this. But with this more activism, or like this music / political activism in the scene, it's completely different. And I think it still contributes a lot towards the change, because you can already see like how like the entire, like, I think in the music scene, I don't know if you are guys like observing what is happening also on the more like mainstream media or like discourse, but it's changing. Like people are getting much more interested in this. People are getting, okay, we can actually perceive music for politics, or music is actually political. But it's also, I think, why I think we actually change stuff, maybe not on a, as you said, hard power, not on this very government level, or like this like policy level in a way, but maybe more on this like different soft power approach. I don't know if I understood it correctly. Is that workshops, every time we've been throwing this workshop already for a few years, and every time we actually do them, it's full. So it also says something, right? That there are still people who are interested, and there are still people who want to join, and like who wants to learn, which I think also shows a lot. Or like we're organizing open calls as Oramix, like for like some sort of a DJ open call, like for a guest mix. So then people, when sending their podcast to us, and then we are like deciding maybe, okay, one of you will play at our party. And I think it's also really good approach against gatekeeping, because we also don't know everyone. It's not like we know everyone in Poland who plays. No, that's not true. And there are still this hidden like people, like these games, this talents, who are like at home doing stuff, they don't know how to get out of this, like, or reach to a broader like to a broader community. And this is also like a thing to do. And there are people who, like, for instance, sent a guest mix to our platform, and then we said, okay, sure, that's amazing, come play at the party. And then these people, these women, like, these women are like, for instance, like now DJs, and they get bookings, and it's also nice to build this scene together. So, yes, so I would say this.
It's a process. You can't really, as you said, expect these results that are quantifiable. You really need to just put your head down and do your thing. It's definitely making a change. If you notice that, or you don't notice that, it starts very, very slowly changing the landscape around you. I would compare that to how, if you're living with someone and they've been changing, like physically, you don't see that. But if you see them after 4 years, you're like, oh my God, you're not the same person, So it's pretty much the same with the changing landscapes in the artistic context.
I don't know if you guys, have any more questions?
I just would like to point to the workshops, because actually, like in the past, I was organizing together with Zosia a series of workshops, but like not as a part of Oramix, but as a part of like the initiative SoundSquare. And also it was like really interesting, like, because like by Zosia I get to the like topics of witchcraft, or like how to build a space according to these ideas. And I really think that like this was the invisible thing that was like happening, like was build a space where there was like not any like vertical hierarchy, where like okay, like in the cases like Zosia was the teacher, but she was like presenting the thing that, okay, like let's teach from each other, like I'm not the one that reached the highest skills, like we can be educated between ourselves as a community. And it was also like very interesting to see it afterwards, like the people that were, I don't know, like afraid to present their work, or not really sure, they make like a small connections during the workshops, new friendships, etc. And actually, like the same thing you were saying, Aftermath, that like after a while, you just saw an EP on a SoundCloud, etc.
I think it's very much about decentralization of the music scene as well. It's about, you know, getting independent from all the big outlets and the people that are gatekeeping, for example, and the people that are on some level telling you what is great and what is not, and what is professional and what isn't. And actually creating your own spaces which allow you to move further. You know, that's what we did with Aramix, and that's what a lot of our crews in Poland do. They don't, you know, look around who's gonna help me and who's gonna give me money. They just do it themselves.
Yeah. I also see there is like a question about what can DJs do and artists in general about it. So it refers to the situation in Poland, and like of course like homophobia, intolerance, hate, which is like really like on the rise around right now in Poland. And well, there's not one good question like answer to this, or like it's not black and white what we can do, but what I would say is something which you can consider if you have a platform, or if you have some sort of activity, like also to kind of share it with other people in a way. So I don't know, give them spotlight, bring them, like show them, show their voice and who they actually are. And like this is what we are trying to do with our podcast series. This is what we are trying to do with workshops, exactly as you said, Jan. Like that, I'm also pretty sure that after few of our like workshops, we were also getting like, for instance, like inquiries that, hey, I attended to your workshop and I just recorded a mix, you know, like, so it's actually somewhere. So it's that echo of this. It's in the air, you know, it's not like nowhere. So I would say using this work, using the platform for political reasons, but also, for instance, like few years ago, 2 years ago, we released like a total solidarity compilation, which was like huge. Like we got more than 100 tracks. So a lot of artists contribute their tracks in a very, very short amount of time, because it was very like we managed to put the entire compilation pretty quickly, as a like response to the homophobic attacks in Poland. And all of the money we raised, we are like we sent to like an organization, like a grassroots organization who is like dealing with homophobia in Poland. So so this is also some sort of an example of activity what you can do, you know, I would say.
Just using things that are within your skill set in a way that can help. It's not really that hard to, you know, connect the dots and try and, because the Total Solidarity, the compilation that Paulina was talking about, came from our anger and our feeling of that we can do anything about the, you know, government's homophobia and the fact that the presidential campaign is like pretty much a cynical attack on the LGBTQIA crowd. So what can we do about that? What can we do? We can just ask our friends to contribute tracks and release that and try to raise funds. And that's what we did. And we actually raised over 30,000 zlotys just like in the first, I think, 3 or 4 months of the after the release of the compilation. So this is like a real thing. This money went to organizations who are working against homophobia and who have been re-granting the money to small town LGBTQIA organizations around Poland.
I also would like to get back to the gatekeeping, because like really often when you see like, I don't know, like all male panels of artists playing somewhere, like really often you can get in touch with the argument that the others doesn't exist. That how should I find them? They are not present, etc., etc. So like how to fight with this?
Well, first of all, I think that's not true. In Poland, okay, So I think it's also pretty like ignorant in a way to say that the others doesn't exist, you know. So that's why we all only like book 5 people all the time, and they're all male.
I understand, but this like it happened to me that I was like facing this argument several times.
I can show you sure again very quickly the screen. Like, for instance, we as Aramix, what we did, which I think might be as some sort of a solution to this situation, is that we create we made this is like still in progress, so this is not a finished project or anything. We're still gonna work on this and also make it maybe a little bit like look a little bit better. But what you can see here, like we made this web, like this map of like with theme and queer DJs and music producers. So basically, you have just pins, you know. So then you go to Poznan. So you let's say that now in Poznan, and I'm like, I don't know, I'm a promoter, you know. So I have, oh yeah, I would like to book more female DJs for my party all over here, and like, how can I actually do this? So we created like this map to also help, like, in a way to avoid the situation which we are talking about. But this is all about basically creating resources, right? And putting your energy and time into this. But also what happens is like exactly if you really think that there is no one there, let's say if this is like, I don't know, maybe a small town in Czechia, I don't know, let's say, you know, and you really think that there are only 5 guys who are playing and there's literally no one else there, maybe it's a time to ask yourself a question. Okay, so but what do we actually represent? Do we want to have a scene like this? Maybe it's time to throw a workshop and like to also gather the people, and for sure like invite, like, I don't know, maybe more like female or women who would be, or like queer people like who would be interested in participation, also to build this scene together if it's lacking. So this is what I would say, but I understand it's very very difficult topic in a way, and also to deal with this, you know, how to respond.
Very, very often the case is that promoters who have been taking care of bigger commercial spaces, they get too comfortable just booking people who they drink vodka with and just booking their male friends. So it's only a matter of showing them that there's a whole world of other people around, and it doesn't really have to be, cis hetero white male playing Berlin style techno all the time, because this is what makes these kinds of scenes boring with time, and it pushes it into the underground again, because people want like in 5 years time, I'm really telling you, there's not going to be a lot of people who are going to be going to Berlin style Berghain inspired black techno nights. It's all a trend. I've seen that happen with techno before, actually. It became this kind of music that's been but by the end of the trend, it started being, seen as this music for aggressive drunkards who just want to, molest women in the club. So and I'm pretty sure that this is where it's heading now. So we're trying to stop that from happening.
I just want to kindly really thank you for the answer. I just want to kindly to ask if there are any more questions from the audience. Please let us know. So I think I will continue, because I will also like to ask how is the current situation in Poland according to like funding these kind of activities that you are doing?
It's pretty much non-existent. Especially in the context of the pandemic, both gastronomy and clubs and entertainment in general has been left to fend on its own, and we're not really getting any help from the government. The government is struggling with the simplest things right now, to be honest. And it's struggling with the most important things in terms of ensuring that people are getting the healthcare that they need or the vaccinations. So it's really chaos, and people have been turning to these illegal plague graves, as I've said before, trying to either make money or get their club to survive by doing this, with the danger of people getting sick, which is really unethical. But there's two sides to every story.
I also think it's like what Oramic is doing is completely not in line with the current government, because like we are openly I would say on the left side on the political scene, which is completely.
This was what I wanted to point, like how with like this political orientation, like what are your possibilities when it comes to like public sources or like public funding systems, etc.
I think it's very limited, and you can see that when there are just like these scholarship programs running on this more government official level, I think it would be really difficult to get one for like what we actually stands for. It's like completely not in line with the current government idea of country and like how Poland should actually look like. So I think this is a problem, a huge problem. Although there is like this our online birthday event from last year, we got a funding. It was not a big one. We received like around 2,000 euros, maybe a little bit less. And why it happened is because one of the huge, I would say one of the biggest one, I don't know if you know this, but Krytyka Polityczna is some sort of a publishing house, but also a cultural center. And they've been actually operating already for such a long time in Poland that they have their own structure and like they have their own budgets and like they're basically their own thing. So they at some point decided to run a scholarship program for artists, because I think they knew that a lot of artists, especially like on this like more like maybe progressive kind of a way of thinking, I would say, I don't know how to even describe this in a way, but who don't fit to the like government line, they are going to be in trouble, because first of all there is pandemic, and secondly like there's the current political atmosphere which doesn't help you to grow when you're a queer person or like not straight, or like when you're female, for instance, and you want to work with the topic of feminism, then you're not gonna. I don't really think you're gonna get any support from the government right now. So I think they use this opportunity to also fund this sort of this type of people, but it's too small. It's one thing I'm aware of. There is a little bit of small fundings, but I don't think we. It's more like feminist funds, like that's really for music scene.
An interesting thing, also going back to the Center for Contemporary Arts residency, was that we were probably the last residency that was still planned by the previous director of the center. And right after our residency, they were having this like concert with neo-Nazi bands playing, and that's what the money went for. So it was like the last, we caught the last bit of funding from the government, which was probably just done by some kind of mistake, or someone who was overseeing these funds didn't really know what Oramics was doing, so the money went to this residency, but like right after it all stopped. And
what are your future plans as Oramics? What are you planning for the near or also long future?
For now, we are currently like in running an open call, or maybe it's also a good way to say actually this, but we are running an open call together with Women Sounds from Ukraine, as a platform from Ukraine, and also from a feminist platform from Sweden. So it's like a partnership between the three countries, Poland, Ukraine, and Sweden. And we're gonna like run an open call for art residency, which will be partly online and also partly offline, so physical. It will happen at Ukraine itself. So this is what we are mostly focused on right now, like promoting this open call and also get as many inquiries as possible, or like submit, just applicants basically and people who would like to participate. And then I think we will see, like there is some stuff planned. I would say, for sure, there will be some, like, I think, thinking about how we can still reinforce this topic of our region and how we can again like bring it up and like what we can do about this. This map I showed you, this is something we would like to improve much more. And but this is time. This is time, and just a lot of work to do. But probably also focusing on like creating resources.
I'm sorry, Avtomat, please continue.
Don't worry. I just wanted also to underline that we all do Oramics in our free time. We are all artists in different, different fields, and this is what we do because we strongly believe that this is what needs to be done, and if we don't do that, then no one's going to do it. So our work is never done, and there's always space for more help.
Yeah, and also the pandemic, I hope, will be like, at least right now in Poland, a lot of people are getting vaccinated. So there is like a real chance that the physical events will get back more or less pretty soon. So that would be also again like after like 1.5 year almost of a break, like of like club night basically, and like physical events. I think it might open again like a new questions what we can actually do, or like what we can curate, and like when, or what to do. But it's still suspended in this like also pandemic thing. It's not that easy also to work during pandemic, I would say.
Yeah, it also really have had a huge impact on us as a collective, and each one of us as an individual person. It's been pretty hard, and we weren't able to realize our core, musical inclinations. So we're waiting for that as well.
Do you think the current situation was or is at some moment beneficial for you in the sense of like caring, sharing, get in touch, etc.?
You mean the online situation?
Yes.
I would say for sure. Like for sure there are some like advantages, like because it opened just entire new sphere in a way, like I don't know, the fact that we can run workshops online, like you can actually do this. Of course, you cannot do everything online. I mean, you cannot show people like how to touch CDJs or which button in a way. It's much more like limited, but you can still a lot of different stuff which you can do online, which of course then, it's safe, first of all. And then secondly, you can reach to much more broader audience, because online it's just basically like borders in a way, like more or less, right? So it has pluses, definitely, for sure. I also think in general the entire pandemic brought a lot of these discussions about the scene itself globally. Like, what is our scene? What just happened to the scene? Because it was drastic, it was brutal. Like, basically, the entire music scene, like clubs, concert venues, everything was completely like closed from a day to day in a way. A lot of people lost their jobs and sources like of finance. And it also brought a lot of like this precarity into discussion, that actually then we realized that a lot of people who were running this club infrastructure, they very often were working like illegally in a way, or they didn't have the social like benefits, or like it wasn't like a fully stated job for them. So I think this pandemic, in a very drastic way, it also brought a lot of realization, like, hey, like, this is the perspective, and like, this is not maybe fully what we would like to have, what we would like to build in a lot of different topics, you know, like starting from the club as an infrastructure itself, like on this economic like layer, but also like talking about local scenes and focusing on this and on this appreciation of local artists. So I would say that it also brings a lot of good stuff as well.
I totally agree. Nothing to add here.
And maybe if there are no other questions, I will ask the last one. But please feel free to ask more. For the ones that want to get you in touch, that want to get in touch with you or like present their work to your platform, how they can do it?
I've actually put our email address in the chat, so maybe I'll just put it up there again. Just email us. We can't really say when we're gonna respond because there's only so many of us. But we'll definitely take a look, and if you wanna cooperate, then we're open to cooperation. Oh yeah, and also our Instagram, our Facebook. Just leave us a message, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, basically this.
Okay, so thank you a lot for your time and for the talk. I think it was really nice and really interesting. Also, thanks to the viewers that they were tonight with us, and I hope we see each other in better futures.
Thank you very much.
Exactly.
Thank you, and have a nice evening.
Oh yes, thank you very much for having us, and I hope we're gonna see each other soon. I love Czechia, so I just want to go there as soon as possible. So thank you, and thank you for all of the really great questions. I hope it was helpful or like interesting or whatever. And
Thanks.
Okay, thank you a lot. Ciao.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.